Allison Salazar and Wendy Ruzika will be sharing some stories of practice with you this afternoon, and we're excited that you could join us. I know a couple of people popped how they're showing up today in the chat box, so if other folks wanted to do that, I don't know if we can beat out energetically positive, but if anyone wants to take a shot at beating that out, it would be a wonderful way to start our afternoon together. So we're just going to start the day with a land acknowledgement, and on your screen you can see the CAS land acknowledgement, and I'm just going to take the opportunity to share my personal land and people acknowledgement, and I ask that you reflect on the land from which you join us today. So I respectfully acknowledge that I live, work, and play in Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis Nation. This is the traditional land for many Indigenous peoples whose histories, languages, and cultures positively influence our communities. I am grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are with us today and those who have gone before us. I am particularly thankful for my relationships with many Indigenous peoples who help guide my work to take it up in a good way. I recognize and am committed to learning more and disrupting the ways in which colonial acts and policies continue to negatively impact Indigenous peoples. My acknowledgement of the land and the people of the land is an act of reconciliation and an expression of gratitude to those whose territory I reside on, and a symbol of my commitment to do my part in building more equitable and just communities. We've got a busy afternoon planned for you, lots of information and stories of practice to share. We'll also have time to connect following each story of practice. So be thinking about what you're going to be entering into the chat box after each story is shared. A special thanks to Rogan Harper, who's our tech support this afternoon, who got us all up and running. We very much appreciate all your support, that this afternoon will be a smooth one from a technological standpoint. I just said that out loud, so I probably just did something wrong. To set the stage for us, I'd like to hand over the mic to Danica Martin, who's a CAS leadership consultant.
Thank you very much, Marianne, and welcome everyone. I'll just take a moment to set the stage here, and as Marianne indicated, we'll have 3 stories of practice this afternoon from East Central Catholic, Rocky View Schools, and St. Albert Public, with ongoing reflection and connection throughout. So we hope you take something away from today's learning opportunity that you can apply within your own context. And so, yes, I have the pleasure of being a CAS leadership consultant, and I'll just take a few moments to ground these stories of practice today. Certainly, we ground everything that we do in our professional practice standards, and that goal of resulting in optimum learning for all students. And so today's webinar and the ensuing webinar series will address a variety of LQS and SLQS competencies, as you see on the slide here. The webinar series is a 4-part series starting today. This is our first webinar, and you'll see the topics and dates and times here. These will be advertised in CAS Connects and will also be available on the CAS events webpage, the same place you went to register for today's webinar. And you'll see that they have sort of a particular focus topic for each webinar, but understanding that the work that school authorities do to support mental health will weave and embed itself in a variety of these 4 topics. And so while today we're focused on promoting positive student mental health, I'm sure you will hear little threads from the other 3 topics on this screen as well. And that's okay, because we know that our work is intertwined like a braid, right? Today's session and all of the webinars, again, will have a focus on the system education leader's role in supporting student mental health in order to ensure that optimum learning for all students. So by participating today and in any other webinars that you attend in this series, you'll have the opportunity to examine system education leader practices that support and build student mental health in your school authority and apply them to your own context. You'll also contribute to the development of some of the learning materials that will be available on the CAS website for future learning opportunities for CAS members. And today's webinar in particular, as I said, focuses on promotion and prevention strategies. These are the three guiding questions that you will hear woven throughout the stories of practice. So you'll hear the school authorities today talk about the successes and challenges that they have faced in promoting positive student mental health. And you'll hear them weave in those system education leader practices that have supported the work that they're doing in their school authorities, and some of that data and evidence piece in terms of how will you know that the work that you're doing is having a positive impact. I will just highlight, and we'll speak to this a little bit later, there is a CAS Perspective project related to this work, but we'll highlight that again at the end of the webinar for your kind of contributions. And just a few slides to ground us in a bit of research. On the Alberta Ed website, we know that supporting positive student mental health is a shared responsibility of parents, educators, and community partners. And sometimes we hear that mental health is not the sandbox of education, but I think we've come a long way in that philosophy, and we know that students who have positive mental health are better able to learn. And so we are very important partners in that supporting of positive student mental health in our school authorities. And it is in fact within our sandbox. You may or may not be aware that the University of Calgary is conducting some research about the mental health in schools pilot projects, and they've come out with some early findings. Just a few are highlighted here that relate to today's topic, that schools are essential settings for mental health supports, that some of the risks associated with poor mental health are now seen as preventable, and so that universal mental health supports are really important to impact our students in a positive way. And they've noticed a trend in their research that active senior leadership is necessary to effectively implement those mental health supports. And so that role of the system education leader lens that we're going to look through in these CAS webinars is very critical and important. We also know from the Working Together document that we're responsible for creating welcoming, caring, respectful, and safe learning environments, which they describe as having all of these criteria. But of particular interest and related to our topic today are these three. Certainly that students feel that adults care for them, that healthy and positive relationships are fostered, but specifically that the promotion and prevention strategies for mental health and social emotional learning are embedded in daily instruction and school-wide activities. And so you'll hear those themes woven throughout the stories of practice that we get into today in this webinar. And finally, just a reminder, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but just a reminder that there is legislation and policy that guides our work as well. Even the Education Act requires us to provide a continuum of supports. And then of course, a variety of other documents reference the importance of this work as well. And so not to lose sight of our legal requirement to engage. And on that note, I think I'll turn it back to Marianne.
Thank you, Danica. It's never a bad thing to be reminded of the legislation and our requirements under the standards as well. So I just appreciate the refresh for all of us. So now it's time for our first story of practice. So I'd welcome Michelle, who's joining us from East Central Catholic Schools, and she can tell us a little bit about herself.
So hello and welcome everyone. For myself, I'm the Director of Teaching Quality and Staff Development. I've been with East Central Catholic, I'm only for 3 years. I'm in my 3rd year. And so I was the one that took on the application for the Mental Health in Schools grant. And I'm the one that's kind of spearheading everything in our division around this. So I'm very happy to be able to share what is happening at East Central Catholic around this particular program. So from this title page, you can see we kind of went into this program or this project, sorry, with 2-prong approach. One, we wanted to build capacity of the adults that are in the lives of our students. So we were talking about our staff members and our parents. And we also wanted to create barrier-free pathways so that all would be able to access the needed supports. Okay. So a little bit about East Central Catholic. The division office, which is where I am, is in Wainwright, and we do serve 5 different communities. We have approximately 2,600 students, a total of 7 schools, and the configuration of those schools, we have 3 that are K to 12, 2 are K to 9. We have 1 outreach school for our 9 to 12s, and we have 1 online school for grades 1 through 12. And amongst those 7 schools, we employ approximately 240 staff members. So prior to receiving the grant, we did have some things already in place. We did have family school liaison workers. Now, prior to receiving the grant, we did increase FTE time for our family school liaison. Prior to the grant, we only had 2.3 FTE to serve all 7 of our schools, but we did manage to increase that to 3.4, and that was before the grant funding. Mental health capacity building workers, they were in place in our north schools for many years, but our south schools did not have any support of this type. And we had just recently introduced the third path framework into our division. So that work began in the 22-23 school year. And the third path speaks to the conditions that are needed to develop a relationship-based approach to student well-being and achievement. So it is a part of mental health, not a completely solely connection, but it is part. And so we did have that in place before our grant came into be. Once we did receive the grant, we were able to add some additional FSL time. What it allowed us to do we only increased it by 0.2, but what it allowed us to do was reconfigure some of the assignments and to make a reduction in the need to support multiple schools, which has been very helpful. Our mental health capacity building support also increased. For one of our schools that did have support already, we were managed to increase the time from 1 day every 2 weeks to 1 day every week. We also hired a wellness coach who is now providing the mental health capacity building opportunities for our 2 south schools that did not have any of these supports previously. So now we have 6 out of our 7 schools receiving support. And the project did allow us to hire mental health navigators. Now, I was very fortunate that I had FSL workers that were not full-time, so I was able to bring them on board as the mental health navigators. And that has been very helpful because it's just providing some additional connection between the project work and what is actually happening inside of the schools. The barrier-free efforts, one of the first things that we did was we created a mental health tab on each one of our school websites. And the intention was to make it easier to find one location where parents, students, community members could locate information. We opted to generate, I guess, the home page to be identical to every one of our schools. And we approached it with this step process to try and help people to see, where are you in this line and what is it that you need to do. On the website, if you click on one of these columns, it's going to take you to another page which has a little bit more detailed information. So for example, clicking on the Parents in Need column brings us to a page where it specifies now the specific content contact information. And the information that's here is unique to each of the school communities. So this one that we're looking at has information from Wainwright, but if we were to look at the one that was from Stettler, it would have information pertinent to that community. Right now, we don't know if it is being utilized. However, the family school liaison workers have found it to be quite helpful for themselves, as they will direct parents to this one website in order to locate information, or they've done the alternative of taking a screenshot of the information and sending it off to parents. Another effort that we made for Barrier Free was we wanted to ensure that each one of our schools had resources right there in the building that would support student mental health. So we took some time to look at what we currently did have and what was available. And now each one of our schools has a robust resource library that the FSL workers, the mental health capacity building workers, and other staff members are able to access in a moment's notice. Wanting to work with our communities and to engage our parents with the local agencies, we had two of our schools make an effort at developing those kind of connections. So what they did was they put on a winter carnival type experience. And through this family fun activity, they had local community agencies, and you can see them listed there on the left-hand side of the screen. This one is from the community of Stettler. The other community also had some a little bit different. Again, it was supposed to be specific to the community. And what they did was, the expectation was one parent had to be in attendance with their child. And as they were moving around from table to table, the children were engaged in some activities, some fun events. And at that time, it allowed the local agencies to engage in a conversation with the parents as well. And so the intention behind this was to build some more connections, to make parents more aware of what was available. It was kind of a more subtle way to introduce the parents to the supports in the community. For our capacity building efforts, one of the first things that we opted to do was to bring in mental health literacy. And we had a session for all of our staff members. Due to our calendar configuration, we did have to offer it on 2 separate days, but our support staff received the message, and so did our teaching staff. What we liked about doing this was that it created some common language and some common understanding, and gave us sort of that platform from which to move forward. We also made an effort to bring in parent sessions around mental health literacy. We did not have the results that we were hoping for. Across our entire division, we had 18 parents that attended the session. We had some discussions about that, and one of the things that we reflected on was that if it made a difference for one family, then we were happy with it. So the fact that we had 18, we did get some very positive feedback from those 18. So we're hopeful that word of mouth will spread some of that information. And the next time that we host a parent session, perhaps we will get a better turnout. From the mental health literacy session that we hosted for our staff members, we asked them to provide us with what were their takeaways, or what did they see as being actionables for moving forward. And so we've used this information that the staff has provided us to guide what our monthly newsletters are going to have in them. So we have always been putting out monthly newsletters, but now we've made it very targeted to have a mental health literacy component in it. The newsletters are mostly for our parent community. And so for our staff, we wanted to make sure that the language is still in the forefront of their minds, that they are able to use the information on a regular basis. So we do bring up a little message about 5 minutes worth, usually in the form of a short video clip, to just help remind the staff of what they did learn on that day and how they might incorporate it into their daily work. Another area that we focused on for building capacity, we were receiving information that there was a lot of frustration in the schools. Teachers were frustrated about the increase in disruptive classroom behaviors. And the administrators were expressing frustration around the fact that they needed to deal with the same students over and over again. So we took some time to work with Dr. Ross Green and what he was doing around collaborative and proactive solutions. So we did some training. Training was given to our administrators, our learning support teachers, our family school liaison workers. And the intention behind this was to just provide another tool to be able to work with these students that were in the office quite frequently to see if we couldn't make some adjustments. And what we have found is one school in particular has been using the process, and it definitely has reported seeing improvement in the behaviors and that the student is able to stay in the classroom more. The other schools have been a bit slower to begin with the process, although the feedback that I'm hearing is that they have utilized some of the language that's part of this particular process and some of the components, but not all. But it does seem to be making a difference, even if all it is doing is providing both the teachers and the students with some ownership around the particular problem, so that it's not just a problem, but there's a way to deal with the problem. So with the efforts that we have done thus far, okay, all right, I'm a little confused. I think this is out of order, but that's all right. We'll go with this. So one of the other things that we've done is I attended a webinar not that long ago, and I saw this particular information was being presented, and the boxes that are highlighted on here, it is talking about what school administrators have some control over when we're thinking about staff wellness. So I've been taking some time to reflect on how I might be able to bring this forward to our school administrators and have them reflect on what is it that they are currently doing and ways that they might enhance their efforts in those 5 areas so that staff wellness is a bit of a focus for us as well. So with the efforts that we've been doing and all the conversations that we've been having, we want to focus on a mental health framework specific to our school division to help us remain focused, to be targeted in what we are doing. We want to be more intentional around the work that we are doing to help support students and staff members with their mental health. Okay, I'm not sure what happened. A couple of slides seem to have disappeared, but that's not a problem. What I also wanted to just share was that there wasn't an unplanned benefit that came from the work that we've done. So we talked about, there we go, thank you. We talked about the third path already being in place. And the mental health literacy and the lagging skills and unsolved problems that we brought in, they really are connected. And it wasn't something that we had thought about in advance and purposely did, but we're very fortunate that staff have been able to recognize how these three resources complement and reinforce each other. And family school liaison workers have shared with me that in conversations with staff members, they've been able to pull ideas from all three of these resources into those conversations. And it's just really helping to form a very solid base for the work that we're doing. So next year, what we are already planning, our school division, our central office has agreed to set time on next year's calendar for staff to intentionally focus on mental health. We know that it will be an afternoon of activities that are intended to provide opportunities to enhance staff relationships and promote educator wellness. We are still in the planning phase of this, but our current thought is we'll have the afternoon begin with a potluck lunch. And leading up to the afternoon, the school communities themselves will determine what the activities will be. We will provide them with some categories, and those categories are going to be focused on ideas that come from the third path framework, as well as from our faith focus. And staff members will sign up for one of the activities and then enjoy a couple of hours with each other and be again intentional about focusing in on their mental health. All right, I do believe now, there we go. That's an overview of what's happening here at East Central Catholic.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I know when we were preparing for this webinar, I was excited to delve into the wellness solutions for educators, that framework a little bit more. I like the trust routines. So that's still on my list to dig into, but I will get to it. I think we're going to take some time now, to have hopefully a little bit of an interaction with the folks who have joined us this afternoon. So as you reflect on Michelle's story of practice from her school division, what resonated with you and what system education leadership practices were evident throughout the story of practice? So we're just gonna give you a little bit of time to add to the chat, so hopefully we can have a little bit of a dialogue here. And just so everybody knows, we did practice our wait time as we prepared for today. So we are going to wait you out until to add some things in. So what resonated with you about Michelle's story?
I can talk. I like the, excuse me, the focus on wellness for staff. I think that's a very, very important aspect of what we're seeing in our school division, Lakeline Catholic, as well. It's the importance of helping staff be mentally well.
Thank you, Carol. I think you can see some other folks have commented on the component of staff wellness. I think we probably all agree that we're seeing our staff struggling as well, particularly since the pandemic. I've also seen some comments about the connection with Ross Green and the wellness focus in the calendar for next year. So lots of practical ideas for people to think about. Michelle, can I ask if you implemented the mental health elementary literacy lessons last year as part of the pilot?
Not as part of the pilot. The year prior to, one of our schools embarked on using the mental health literacy lessons in their classroom. Great positive feedback. That one person is continuing with it. When we had the mental health literacy session, it was brought forward and awareness was raised around it. I don't know at this time if more teachers are utilizing it or not, but from everything that I'm hearing, a really good resource to be used.
Yeah, we in St. Albert Public, we piloted the resource last year with about 800 kids across about 5 elementary schools, and the feedback from staff was really positive. So if folks are looking for a classroom resource that teachers can use, the feedback was really positive, for sure. Another comment about the system-wide school resource collection as well. I think having those common resources available to kids and families and staff really can make a difference for folks. Danica, did you want to add anything in?
I don't think so. I appreciated the whole story, but I particularly appreciated the there was a unique focus sort of on that managing operations and resources in terms of personnel allocation, the resource library, and all of those centrally sort of determined supports that consistently were applied throughout the school authority. So I noted that. And I also really liked the reflection that Michelle shared on the unplanned benefits and how, as a result of the work that they were doing, people are starting to see how the puzzle pieces fit together, which is great and exciting and a really high leverage strategy for sure.
Michelle, did you have any closing comments or thoughts that you want to share before we move to Wendy and Allison?
I'll just say that heading into it, we had a very blurry vision of what we wanted to accomplish, and not really a very clear pathway, but through a lot of discussions, we've been sort of finding our way. And I do think that what we have done thus far has made a difference, and we're going to continue to focus on the skill set of the adults that are in the students' lives, and hopefully we'll continue to see growth for mental health wellness in all people that are part of our division.
Thank you so much. And I think now we're ready for our second story of practice. I'm just going to welcome Wendy and Allison from Rocky View Schools to the forefront.
Great, thank you very much. Good afternoon, and we'd like to thank you for the opportunity for us to share our work around mental health in Rocky View Schools today. There will be 2 of us presenting today, Allison Salazar, who's our acting supervisor of Stepping Stones to Mental Health, and myself, Wendy Ruzicka. I'm the Assistant Director of Learning Supports. Our first few slides provide an overview of Rocky View Schools, our vision, and our vision of Rocky View Schools is a world-class learning organization where all students achieve their absolute best. The purpose is Rocky View Schools connects with all students to ensure that everyone learns, belongs, and succeeds. This map provides you with a sense of the areas of Rocky View Schools serves. We are a horseshoe shape around the west, north, east of Calgary. We are the 5th largest school division in the province. And as you can see, that our large clusters are around the centers of Airdrie, Cochrane, and Chestermere, as our majority of our schools are located there. The other areas have approximately 1 to 3 schools in those areas. So some of our highlights, we have over 28,000 students and growing. We have over 3,000 staffs. We have over 50 schools. We are situated on the traditional territories of the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. And then, although we are viewed as a rural school division, we have an urban feel with our larger centers of the town of Cochrane, the city of Airdrie, and the city of Chestermere. So wanted to just review with you our overall goals and our hopes for our outcomes. So our first goal was to collaboratively increase and expand our ability and reach to promote positive mental health in children, youth, families, and all school staff in the communities where they teach, work, and live. Our first outcome was an increase in developmentally appropriate knowledge of mental health related issues, appropriate knowledge of mental health practices, and when and how to access supports. This includes increased skills for self-care, self-regulation techniques, communication, healthy relationship skills, an increase in knowledge of physical wellness, sleep, and nutrition as it is related to mental health, increase developmentally appropriate knowledge of healthy adolescent development, increase knowledge of available supports in schools and the community, increase belief of the importance and value of positive mental health in self and others, reduce fear, stigma, and stigmatizing behaviors to normalize mental health, mental illness, and help-seeking behaviors, increase understanding of mental health related issues in self and others, increase sense of belonging and connectedness, increase self-efficacy and sense of control related to one's well-being, including communication and relationship building skills, self-regulation strategies, ability to choose healthy foods, and participate in physical activities. Our outcome 2 is looking at an increase in understanding of self-efficacy and sense of control related to one's well-being, increase self-care practices, increase use of self-regulation and healthy coping skills, increase help-seeking behaviors, increase social support networks, and positive social norms. This includes increased sense of physical and psychological safety at home, school, and in the community. Strengthen positive personal relationship between children, their peers, and their caregivers. So we were looking at our pilot of targeting our 27 middle schools across the divisions that serves approximately 11,200 students. Our goal was to target middle school years, grades 5 to 9 and ages 10 to 15, as that was an area of concern emerging from the pandemic. It was an age group identified through data that was underserved in universal mental health learning and capacity building. And we wanted to see if targeting this age group would impact overall increased mental health and wellness within this group and improve outcomes with the targeted group over time. This grant allowed us to expand supports for middle year students and provide a more upstream approach rather than triangulating at the individual level for many students.
And so the way we decided to approach targeting those middle school years was by integrating supports into the existing Stepping Stones to Mental Health program with Rocky View. So Stepping Stones to Mental Health is part of the Mental Health Capacity Building in Schools initiative, which works to promote positive mental health in children, youth, and families, and support individuals in the community who interact with children and youth. It's based on research and best practice literature that demonstrates that mental and emotional well-being can be developed, nurtured, and supported through promotion and prevention efforts. Our collaboration with MHCB fits within the Tier 1 Universal Service Delivery Framework with some collaborative overlap into Tier 2, including screening and brief supports to facilitate referral pathways to intensive care. Schools are recognized as hubs from which MHCV mental health prevention and promotion activities for children, youth, and families are based. However, these activities expand beyond school boundaries to involve parents, caregivers, and other community members who closely interact with children and youth. Sorry, we have an alert going on here for a second. We're back. Connecting with health and community partners is critical for the MHCV initiative to become a coordinated community approach. We also have a strong relationship with our AHS zone partners, as well as programming alignment is also critical for optimization of the continuation of care model and to meet the needs of children, youth, and families. By introducing and applying mental health wellness concepts early in life, we're providing children, youth, and families information and strategies that can be adopted and integrated into daily routines so they can improve their health outcomes over the lifespan, as well as increase their mental wellness and quality of life. So with our Stepping Stones mental health team, we have our success coaches. They offer a diverse range of support from delivering classroom presentations to organizing lunchtime activities. Their focus is on providing both universal and targeted interventions to bolster student well-being and success. Beyond those core duties, coaches are also advocates for mental health awareness. They collaborate closely with school staff and community partners to champion programs that prioritize mental health. Through mentorship and fostering positive relationships, they serve as role models for students, encouraging healthy peer interactions. An essential aspect of their work involves building capacity within the school and the wider community. They achieve this through facilitating discussions, hosting workshops, as well as providing resource materials that empower individuals to prioritize their mental well-being. Our success coaches are integral members of the Learning Supports Department, and they collaborate closely with teachers, staff, and parents to ensure that each student's unique needs are addressed. And our collaboration is enhanced with ready access to the RVS multidisciplinary teams and within and supporting schools. For example, our occupational therapists, school psychologists, speech language pathologists, etc. Our coaches come from a variety of educational and professional backgrounds, including social work, education, psychology, and nursing. This diverse experience enables a variety of lenses through which to view mental health and student wellness. And through their expertise and dedication, coaches play a pivotal role in empowering students to achieve both academic and personal success. Some of the programs that our coaches have run in the classrooms, we run Mind Up, we do anxiety programs, social skills group, mini-me yoga, healthy relationships groups. They also provide presentations both virtually and in person around different mental health topics, as well as learn at lunches, and take part in awareness campaigns around things like Pink Shirt Day, Orange Shirt Day, Mental Health Awareness Week, National Child and Youth Mental Health Day, as well as community engagement, doing mindfulness in the park activities and partnering with community agencies to provide programming there as well. Our coaches work 2 days a week in their core schools. So in these schools, they have dedicated space where students can access support such as mindful activities for emotional regulation and learn about community resources. The coaches here are considered members of the school staff and engage in wellness initiatives with that staff. The other days they are at non-core schools, which are in the same geographical area as core schools, but they only receive programming for a few classes or grades. Coaches don't have dedicated space here, instead going in to deliver programming and then leaving, working out of common space such as the staff rooms and learning commons between their scheduled programming. Coaches also provide resources for wellness initiatives, but they wouldn't run them in these non-core schools. So this can look like providing teachers with activities or lesson plans or sharing bulletin board displays with the school counselors.
Our success coaches also work to support staff wellness in the division. They provide professional learning sessions such as mental health first aid and trauma-informed practices. Success coaches also run wellness initiatives both through email and in person. This can look like adding wellness tips to an administrator's weekly newsletter, doing virtual self-care challenges among a school staff, or setting up healthy snacks in the staff room. Success coaches also provide mentorship opportunities to school staff to increase their ability to support student mental well-being. Coaches will model the delivery of mental health programming, as well as share lesson plans and activities for teachers to do on their own with their classes. This grant has allowed us to hire 9 new success coaches. These staff were focused on the middle school years and were put into our K-8 and middle schools throughout the division. Previously, coaches were embedded in high schools as their core schools and provided non-core support to mostly our elementary grades. While support was offered to the middle schools, most of the requests came from the younger grades. By hiring additional staff, specifically to target the middle years, these schools were able to benefit from the programming that the younger and older grades had benefited from in previous years. The addition of more success coaches allowed us to reach a higher, larger portion of RBS students. In the 2022-2023 school year, the additional coaches provided programming in 20 new schools, delivering 224 programs. From September 2023 until the end of December 2023, the additional coaches have delivered 387 programs in additional 27 schools that were not being reached by our staff previously. These additional supports have allowed us to provide more equitable programming across the division, with all program requests from schools being able to be fulfilled.
The adoption of success coaches reflects a commitment to proactive action and tangible outcomes in supporting student mental health. Embedding these resources directly into the school system demonstrates a dedication to addressing mental health needs comprehensively and systematically. This proactive approach not only mitigates crises, but also fosters a culture of ongoing support and wellness promotion throughout the school community. The increased number of coaches has led to a greater accessibility of universal and targeted supports. This ensures a broader range of interventions is available to a larger number of schools, thus promoting equitable access to support services. Coaches have been able to assist school counselors by taking on universal and targeted supports, which in turn helps the school counselors feel less stressed. They're also able to provide new resources and different perspectives to student support teams. Staff members have also reported feeling more empowered to discuss topics of mental wellness and social emotional well-being within their classes. Additionally, they express increased confidence in their students' abilities to learn skills like perspective taking and emotional management, following the provision of that foundational understanding from the coaches. Students have felt more competent and confident in their ability to navigate socially and emotionally challenging situations. For example, after a bullying unit, many middle school students appeared more inclined to voice their concerns to teachers and to be more aware of how their actions impacted others. And this was based on feedback from students as well as reports from administrators about the trends of how frequently bullying was reported in schools. After Kamochi's class, which is a kindergarten program to teach about emotions, students started telling staff how certain emotions were related. For example, kindness can be a useful way to respond to others feeling left out or upset. And they were talking about how paying attention to others' feelings makes them feel more comfortable and secure in their interactions. And students were witnessed using the strategies taught in programming to resolve conflicts. Some of the factors that we think contribute to the success of our implementation. One is the onboarding process of new coaches, which involved a gradual shift from shadowing more established coaches to co-facilitating programming to running programs on their own. This phased approach, coaches were able to acquire proficiency in delivering content, ensuring consistency across the division. Furthermore, exposure to seasoned coaches during the training period enabled the acquisition of valuable insights, including tips and tricks on best practices for program delivery and effective classroom management strategies. Before joining a core school, coaches and the program manager met with the administrators of that school and discussed the school's needs. This allowed the coach to tailor programming to the school and to begin to build a vision of how they could best work with the school to support the students. The process of embedding coaches in core schools for 2 days a week allowed them to establish relationships with both students and staff. And this consistent presence enabled students to retain and apply their learning more effectively as they received regular reinforcement of programming topics throughout the week from various teachers, as well as at home. Additionally, coaches being visible around the school frequently outside of scheduled programming time further enhanced student engagement and understanding. We looked into using innovative materials like videos and games to deliver educational programs, which enhance student engagement and retention of information. Students are more likely to relate the learning to their own lives when concepts are illustrated or demonstrated through these mediums. Moreover, discussing how lessons connect to students' hobbies, extracurricular activities, home life, and friendships encourages them to apply their learning more broadly. Similarly, when teachers integrated program learnings with other subject areas such as English, social, math, science, and phys ed, students learned more effectively and with a greater sense of competency. The Stepping Stones program also garners significant divisional support within Rocky View, which reflects a collective recognition of the importance of student mental health. School administrators are actively encouraged to engage with the program team for assistance in this regard, underscoring a commitment to prioritize student well-being. Despite challenges in finding dedicated class time for discussions on mental health, administrators have demonstrated a proactive stance by allocating necessary resources, acknowledging that students grappling with mental health issues may face obstacles in their learning journey. Furthermore, there's a shared understanding that fostering awareness and understanding of mental health is essential for all students, not just those who are currently experiencing difficulties, and emphasizes the program's universal relevance and significance. Some of our key challenges in implementing the program: building capacity within teaching staff to implement the programming on their own remains challenging, despite the provision of professional learning and mentoring opportunities. Coaches have begun providing less formal professional learning sessions, such as at staff meetings, which has been promising in having school staff adopt those practices. We also been providing instructions on delivering programming or activities to teachers rather than having to schedule a full learning session. Engaging those older middle school and high school students has proven to be challenging. These students often don't attend optional programming, and getting them to participate in classroom discussions can be difficult. And so the coaches have been focused on developing more engaging activities that address this issue. They've been also organizing drop-in events rather than requiring registration, since some of our youth have expressed that the commitment required by registration makes participation more challenging. Coaches have found that building relationships in non-core schools has been a challenge. Their daily rotation through different classrooms means they lack a consistent presence outside of teaching hours, limiting their ability to establish trust and familiarity with students. Additionally, they have few opportunities to engage or collaborate with teachers to understand and support their unique needs. And so in order to address this, the coaches have been organizing Learn It lunches on the days they're in non-core schools between their regular scheduled programming, as well as reaching out to teachers through email to obtain that understanding and provide support. Another challenge is just the limited space in many schools, making it difficult to provide targeted supports. Many of our schools are at or over capacity, and so finding that space for things like targeted groups is difficult. The spaces that are available are often also used for academic support, which hinders the provision of specialized services. So this issue just talks about the exploration of alternative solutions, things like using shared spaces or considering flexible scheduling to accommodate the growing demand for the targeted mental health services. And then our final one here, the high demand for mental health services has just created this overwhelming workload for coaches. It's a nice problem to have that we are in high demand, but some of our coaches do get a lot of requests, and it is tricky to fill them all. This can result in certain schools receiving fewer services just to resource constraints and staff limitations. With limited resources, and we've had previously a first come, first served basis for providing support, some schools might not receive the requested assistance. There are efforts underway to build that capacity among school level staff, but staff turnover does pose a persistent challenge, and it requires an ongoing training. And that brings us to our end.
Thanks, Wendy and Allison, so very much for all that detail. Similar to what we did after Michelle's presentation, we're going to take some time to answer these two reflection questions. So what part of the story of practice resonated with you, and what system education leadership practices were evident throughout the story of practice? So, and I think we're a small group, so if people wanted to just join in and verbally share, I don't think we're limited to the chat. If folks want an opportunity to have the mic, you can certainly do that.
I can go. I appreciated the universal access focus, the UDL, like what is good for some is usually good for everyone. Becoming tiered supports is kind of becomes your non-negotiables, or what you're looking for when you're evaluating the success of a program. But can also appreciate the workload issue. I know we're asking for more and more and more of people, and space and time and resources, including human, is always a consideration. So I think regardless of how big or how small you are, that's a big piece for everybody. So thank you.
Thanks so much. Thankfully, I'm comfortable with awkward silences, just so everybody knows. I'm just gonna wait it out. I know one of the things that I really appreciated was the scaffolding for new success coaches and when you're bringing them to the work, I very much appreciated that. Okay, we're gonna wait for one more something that resonated before you get to listen to me for 20 minutes.
Hi, Marianne. If I did something to my screen, I might need Rogan to help, but I can't write in the chat. I don't know what I did. So I can't even put my hand up. I really like the way that you had your people organized into core schools and non-core schools, and that I would actually like to learn more about that organization piece and the supports for the core versus the non-core. But thanks. I took a lot of notes. Thank you.
Sure, we'd love to connect at any point in time. So please feel free to, we'll put in our emails in the chat if that would help.
Marianne, can you take down their email address? Because I can't see my chat. I lost it somewhere.
I will do that. I have their emails anyway, because we've been communicating a little bit via email. So I will pass them along to you for sure. But hopefully other folks can see the chat and get the email addresses. Okay, so now it's my turn, and I'm going to take you down a little bit of a different path. So I'm Marianne. I'm the Deputy Superintendent with St. Albert Public Schools, and this is my my 9th year with the school division. And we're going to talk, or I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're trying to interrogate what it means to belong in schools as a prevention and promotion strategy. So just a little bit about St. Albert Public Schools before I get going. So we serve over 9,500 students from preschool to grade 12. We have 16 schools currently. We offer a diverse range of programs, including a fair number of programs of choice, such as French Immersion, Kogoto, Logos Christian, hockey and recreation academies, and various specialized inclusive education programs. St. Albert Public has grown substantially over the last decade, increasing from about 6,000 students to 10,000 students. We are a division that's super proud of our division culture, that we really promote a small community feel. We care for one another, and we do our best to show it on a daily basis. So supporting mental health and wellness was a key part of our work prior to the pandemic, as I'm sure it was for all of us on this call. But as we emerged from those unprecedented times, we shifted our approach because we really wanted to capture the interconnected nature of the work that we do, and we didn't want our mental health and wellness work to be siloed. We wanted everyone to see connections between mental health, between our instructional choices, between our reconciliation work, our student voice work, our SOGI work. So we worked really hard to interconnect those pieces. So what you have in front of you on the screen is our 4-year education plan. It's represented as a circle now. So this is a new way to think about planning. So in the center of the circle is our connection, growth, and wellness. So those are our division priority areas. We wanted them to be simple so that it would resonate with staff and with parents in our community. So everybody would be able to easily communicate what our district priorities are. And in the center is equity. And I think as I go through my presentation today, hopefully you'll see that creating equitable spaces, creating equitable access, relationships, processes, and outcomes is really at the core of our prevention and promotion work and all of the work that we're trying to do. Outlining the circle are the anchors that guide our work. And those smaller circles that are on the very outside, they are our outcome areas, and they're intentionally written as actions as opposed to statements, as we recognize that we are continually striving to improve, grow, and strengthen our work. So I'll just briefly state them. Strengthen the use of responsive instruction and sound assessment, honor diverse learning needs, support wellness and mental health, enhance partnerships, policies, and governance, advance equity and reduce barriers, and weave in First Nations, Métis, and Inuit ways of knowing and being. So we deliberately represented our education plan as a circle, and so we're trying to shift away from thinking about our work as linear and applied problem solving. It's messy, it's complex, and it's fluid, and we wanted our plan to represent that. Similar to what Michelle's talked about things being blurry, I think we've just decided to embrace blurriness, and that's just the reality of what we do, and we wanted to represent our work in a more authentic way. So as we reflected on supporting mental health and wellness, and really by thinking about students' sense of belonging in schools, and really thinking about students who may not feel like they belong. So we know that that connection and belonging are key to mental health. And as we moved forward, we were intentional about broadening our conception of what belonging means, and to think critically about belonging in terms of systemic barriers and systemic structures that might impede that sense of belonging. So these 3 questions on the screen are guiding our work right now. How do systemic barriers impact students' mental health and wellness? How can we create space for students and families to share their lived experiences? And how do we transform our spaces and experiences to make our schools more inclusive and equitable? So really what we're trying to do is create spaces that are more ethical, where folks who come from different places feel comfortable, they feel listened to, they feel heard, and they feel seen. So we want folks to be who you are in the space. And I think we know that we have some work to do there, and where students and staff and families are safe to claim their identities in our buildings. So from these questions, we developed some, what I would call through lines that inform our work. And I won't read them to you, but really what we're trying to do is disrupt the expectation or requirement that everybody adheres to the cultural norms, practices, and standards of the West. We want to disrupt the heteronormative narrative that permeates our spaces. And we're also trying to disrupt the Western notion of mental health and wellness, and bring in spaces or create spaces for other perspectives. And I want to just be very clear, this sounds like an anti-Western approach. It's not anti-Western at all. It is just about valuing other ways of knowing and being, and ensuring that we know whose stories matter and whose stories are heard. So I'm just going to spend the remainder of the time with you, just sharing how we got to this place to think about this sense of belonging in a different way. So during the pandemic, our school and division leadership engaged in a series of learning about anti-racism. And it was really the first opportunity that we had as a leadership team to reflect in small groups about unconscious biases, about our privilege, about microaggressions, about stereotypes, prejudice, discrimination, and oppression, and how they manifest in our buildings. And I think an aha moment for me during those discussions was someone commented, "I don't see color. I treat everybody equally." And Tina Fayez and Amarjeet Sohi, before he was mayor, were our facilitators. And they really challenged us around that, because being able to say that you don't see color is really a denial of racism, and a denial of the experiences that lots of our racialized folks face every day, and it's limited to folks who hold privilege. And I think for all of us in that space, it was really a turning point for us to individually and collectively reflect on how we unconsciously and consciously collude with a system entrenched in colonialism and racism that are designed to perpetuate inequities. And in addition to those sessions, we've been working with Dr. Dustin Louie out of the UBC. He's the Director of Indigenous Teacher Education Programs for the last number of years. And he's been supporting us around our reconciliation, our indigenization, and our decolonizing work. And Dr. Louie has really emphasized that the importance of decolonizing and again, creating more ethical spaces. And in terms of our walking together work and our reconciliation work, we've been out in community quite a bit. So we go to powwows, sundances, Métis days. Lots of us have participated in sweat lodges, and we've participated in PD, and I wouldn't even call it PD necessarily, but interactions that are deeply vulnerable. And so the folks who have participated in those sessions, we've really seen each other, not as a role, but as people. And I think that has been really key to supporting the work that we're trying to do with kiddos, and really seeing our kids as well. One of the things that the Walking Together work led to was we have a relationship with a local Cree man who agreed to share his story of racism as a student, as a parent, and as a new resident to St. Albert with a leadership group. And the power of his experience, again, just shifts the way you think about things. It's not about what's in a book. It's not about what you read in an article. It is about the lived experience of folks. And we knew that we needed to create more opportunities for that. And then finally, in terms of those foundational pieces, St. Albert Public has been working with the ARC Foundation for the last 8 years, supporting SOGI inclusive practices. So how did we move forward as a system? So we're a very site-based system here. We don't often do division PDs. Actually, we've never done division PD with the exception of October 2022, where we knew we had small pockets of folks among our staff who knew that we needed to really look at systemic change and engaging with students in a different way. So on in October 2022, we had all of our staff come together with two powerful keynote speakers who heard about the work that we were going to be doing around equity, so that everybody knew that this is the path we're going down. In addition to that, we've been creating opportunities for folks to come together around professional learning, and I have just 2 resources up for you, Street Data and Critical Hope. And these 2 resources come together to support what we're trying to do in terms of student voice, in terms of looking for data in different places, looking for data in the margins. I love Dr. Grain's phrasing, relentless incrementalism, because I think that describes a lot of the work that we do, whether it's around promotion of wellness or mental health, or just the work that we do, and the importance of all of us being aware of our own positionality if we're going to engage in the work. I'm just going to share, before I go to this one, when we come together around these book studies, we're not just talking about the concepts in the book, we're also talking about how they're impacting practice. And I'm just going to share 2 examples around how 2 schools have taken up this work. So one of our schools has a large student population who are Muslim, and they fast during Ramadan. And the school admin team there has been working really hard to engage with kids and provide opportunities for them to share what their school experience is like. And they shared that having to prove that you are fasting to be excused from phys ed, which was their school practice, was really disrespectful to their identities as Muslims. And so the school heard that, recognized it, and changed that practice, and it has created more trusting supports to honor their students fasting. Another example is a junior high. We're engaged in a social studies pilot there, where we're being intentional about introducing concepts of bias, marginalization, equity, decolonization, privilege, and using those lenses and looking at the curricular content within Social Studies 9. So rather than do a midterm exam, which was typical for that site, they decided to give them a task where they could take those concepts and look at the school's dress code in terms of those concepts and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And honestly, it was so beautiful to read some of the kids' reflections because they were able to clearly identify cultural, economic, and gender inequities and biases within that dress code. And so the school has since removed that dress code and has committed to co-constructing a new dress code that is maybe not bias-free, but minimizing a bias anyway. So it's just about empowering kiddos to have important conversations. One of the interesting things about the work that we're trying to do around student voice is we actually have to convince kids that we want to know what they're experiencing rather than what they think that we want to hear. So that's been a journey as well to let them know that we're authentic. So one of the things that we've done is reconceptualized as well how we collect data. So we did a survey of the Indigenous students within our school division, and we asked both quantitative and qualitative questions. And you can see from the results on your screen that it was clear that we needed to do some work around racism, when over 30% are saying they experience or witness racism frequently or almost always. And we had some work to do around, again, connection with an adult. The qualitative data really showed us that Indigenous students in our school division were not gaining pride about their identity as being Indigenous from the school. They were learning about residential schools and some of the historical pieces, but they weren't seeing the beauty and complexity of their cultures within our buildings. So we knew we needed to make some changes there. And we added some questions to our local survey to dig into that sense of belonging as well. So this is the results from last year, which is the first time we asked these questions to all of our junior and senior high kids. And again, you can see that racism, that homophobia, transphobia are concerns in our buildings for our kids. And so we need to work with them to take action. The other thing that we did is that we moved from a satisfaction scale to a frequency scale. So we used to always ask whether or not, kids were satisfied with this or satisfied with that, but now we've moved to rarely, sometimes, often, almost always, or frequently and almost always. And we've messed up our trend data for sure. But you can see here from the belonging question that when we change to that frequency scale, we're getting better information. So, when kids say that they don't feel like they belong in school all the time, we can inquire, what does that look like? Why do you respond? And why do you respond like that? And schools have been really taking up that work to not only use the survey as part of their education plan, but actually engaging students around the results and really been quite happy with how they're using that information. And these are just some questions. Again, you can see the impact of the frequency scale. So these are our wellness questions. And again, we know we have to do some more work there. The other component that we changed as we prepared for this work is looking at some of our engagement opportunities with our community. So we've been doing stakeholder engagement workshops for many, many years, primarily focused on informing our education plan, and that's still the case. But we've targeted the workshops in a different way. So last year was the first year where we had, you can see a picture of Tony here. He's a member of our community, but he came and delivered a short keynote address, but a keynote address about how he hid his identity, how he laughs at microaggressions and racism, and what he experiences currently in St. Albert in terms of racism, overt racism and subtle racism. And it's really interesting for folks who may want to deny that this is an issue in our community, when you hear from someone in our community about what they face on a regular basis, staying in that place of denial is really, it's challenging. It's not really possible anymore. So then we followed up the stakeholder engagement workshop with smaller listening circles. So these are some comments that we heard from our students. And, you know, clearly the students are telling us that they want to have these important conversations, that racism impacts them individually, it impacts them collectively, that we need to disrupt and that we need to do some staff training. So again, we're hearing from our students that they have ideas about what can be done, and so we are trying to make what they want to have done in our school division. So they're informing some of the things that we're doing around staff training. This year we also did a second stakeholder workshop again, and this year we decided to have one of our students speak to her experience. And Rogan, if I can just get you to play that for me, that would be lovely, so you can hear directly from Cooper. Yeah, I can't hear her. Can anybody else?
I'm going to put a lot of emphasis on these two groups because they're a pill-sized example of MD Cutts Junior Highs. I am also a member of the Hockey Academy and a member of WD Cutts Indigenous Student Council. I'm going to put a lot of emphasis on these two groups because they're a pill-sized example of my life and they're the one that affects my schooling. I walk on a line between two worlds. In one world, I'm a member of what's considered the elite. I get to be a part of something that symbolizes success, pride, and speciality. I get to be in Hockey Academy. In my other world, I'm a proud Métis girl with pride and connection to her culture and heritage. I get to connect to my roots. I get to be in the Indigenous Student Council. But I never walk in both. I am unable to walk in both of these worlds at the same time, but I carry my lessons with me from both worlds, and this gives me a unique viewpoint on the world that many people do not have or are given. My dad always told me, Cooper, we are double agents. What he meant by this is that my friends will say things about me and Indigenous people that they would never say if I presented as Indigenous. Because in their eyes, I can't really be Native because I'm one of them, and I can't really be one of them because I'm Native. They do not want me to be Native because I'm their friend, and they don't want to be friends with someone who is Native. I have to work 5 times as hard to be one of them because from the moment my status card slipped out of my pocket, I was marked as less than. I am not allowed to be both. It is similar to a Venn diagram. In one circle, with, for lack of a better words, my white side, and on the other, my Native side. I cannot fully fit in one circle without abandoning the other, and since I refuse to abandon one side of myself, I am forced into a lonesome middle on the line. Many people in St. Albert wouldn't understand this, because they believe I can be both. They believe racism isn't something that holds me and other students back, but our community is riddled with acts of microaggressions, such as comments, jokes, and exclusions. I'm going to give some examples of things that have been said to me regarding my heritage that would have never been said to me if I presented differently. These are said to me by students of St. Albert Public Schools. I've been given the nickname Chief Littlefoot. I've been asked, did you have that paid for with your res tokens? I've been told to go back to my teepee. Asked, do you live in a mud house? What's your real name? Is it Ugadagawa? You haven't earned anything. The government handed it all to you. Does your dad even work? Your sister is Native and autistic? Damn, that's a double whammy. Multiple comments regarding the stereotype. Pepsi? Are you gonna have KFC for dinner? Go catch your buffalo. Are you going to spear me? I wouldn't trust your family around my valuables. You play house res hockey? Go back to your res. Do you use res dogs as hockey pucks? Have res people discovered fire? And I've had multiple people break down how Indigenous I am because they do not want to be friends with someone who is Native, so they try to discredit my heritage. As a double agent, I am faced with these comments daily because people feel far more comfortable saying them around me because of the color of my skin. This unique upbringing is exactly why I believe St. Albert needs to stop living in their shell and realize racism is here and it is now, and it cannot be stopped until we stop racism at its roots with our newest generations. St. Albert Public Schools is the perfect place to start this change. Once we acknowledge the elitism and racism within our community, we can take steps as a community to make it so students like me are no longer forced to walk on the line. Students can enjoy school without feeling like they're not enough for their peers because of their ethnic background, or that they have to ignore racist remarks to keep their friends. If I can sit up here as a blonde, blue-eyed girl in Hockey Academy and still face as much discrimination as I do, imagine what happens to darker students or what opportunities are denied from them if this is what I face. St. Elmo Public Schools and our community need to focus on microaggressions and racism in order to eradicate it. Thank you for your time and having me to speak on my unique experiences.
So that was Cooper shared that as part of, she spoke in front of 150 teachers, support staff, community members, admin, trustees, and delivered that message to everyone. And obviously it was very difficult for lots of folks to hear. And but again, you can't deny the work that needs to be done. And this directly relates to mental health, because if once we create space for kids to talk about their identities and how stereotypes impact them, then we're getting to some of the root causes that they're facing in terms of those peer interactions. And Cooper's mom, prior to her delivering the address, actually said to Cooper, like, do you really think that they want you to be that bold and that frank? And she said, yep, I do. And so we've chosen to record Cooper's message so that we could, and obviously Cooper agreed and her parents agreed, so that we can share the power of her words here today. But also several schools have used it in staff meetings, again, to facilitate some of these conversations. These are some of the, again, what we heard from students at that stakeholder workshop after Cooper's address to them. And you can see the prevalence of how stereotypes are impacting our students, whether it's acts of racism, sexism, jokes, and microaggressions are very, very common. They feel that our staff don't necessarily have the skills or the confidence in order to intervene. That came up last year as well. You can see that they want to be seen. So students also feel teachers need to be more comfortable with recognizing people's differences. And the fact that online stressors are so impactful for our kids, but they also recognize that punitive actions aren't the answer. They very much identify the fact that we need to be restorative in our nature. So some of the other pieces that we're doing around creating that sense of belonging, I referenced earlier around our SOGI work. So our board has had a standalone sexual orientation and gender identity policy since 2013. We were the second school division in the province to pass a policy and reg. We recognize Pride Week. We fly the Pride flag and the Treaty 6 and the Métis flag at our division office all year round. And one of the things that we're always cognizant of is not to be performative. So it's not just about raising flags. We are trying to do this work and embedded work in our buildings every day, and really trying to decenter that heteronormative narrative that exists. All of our schools have SOGI leads, and all of our schools have safe spaces. Our board just approved last year a 2S LGBTQIA plus perspectives course that's being offered in one of our junior highs currently. And last year we started doing a diversity conference where we're bringing folks from the community to talk about their experiences around their identity, their struggles, their mental health struggles, and their road to being authentically who they are. And again, you have some comments here from the most recent conference from students who participated. And again, it is a beautiful thing to see 150 students from across the division from all of our schools come to be in a place together and truly authentically be themselves and have fun. It is truly magical. Supporting truth and reconciliation. So, and I know I'm probably going a little bit long, so I'm gonna whip through these pretty quickly. But we have a First Nations Cree lead, a Métis lead, and an Inuit lead teacher who support learning and representation in our schools. And one of the things that I would just briefly say about this, when you have Roderick is there, and last year he had grade 9 students sitting outside in circle in June, closing their eyes and feeling the warmth on their face as a mental health strategy, as a health strategy. And again, it was a beautiful thing to watch. James is there doing Inuit games, and Inuit games are based on pain and resistance, strength and endurance, agility, and social games. And one of the things that I love about the work that these folks are doing is that they're showing how certain cultural activities are very much connected to really core values, and that connection to culture is being part of your identity, and feeling pride in that is important for all kids, not just Indigenous kiddos. The other thing that we've really embraced as a school division that is land-based learning. So we have, we're fortunate that one of our assistant principals has a 70-acre property not far from St. Albert that we take kids out to a lot, and take staff out there to do PD as well. And again, there's something about being on the land, slowing down, showing reciprocity to the land, gratitude to the land, minimizing harm, asking permission, and showing care are all lessons that staff and students take into their daily lives in terms of their wellness. And then the other thing that we did a virtual Headstrong conference in 2022, and we did an in-person Headstrong conference last year, where we bring in folks from the community again that students can relate to. So not olds like me, but they can, we had a rapper from Calgary and a singer-songwriter from Calgary who shared their mental health struggles, and also the positive coping and the path to recovery. The thing that I really like about Headstrong is that it always includes the students who attend having some time to action plan about things that they can do within their buildings to reduce stigma and support reaching out for help. And so you can see on the screen there, one of our high schools did Bursting the Stigma at Paul Kane. So they had them set up with water balloons. So lots of us got wet that day in support of reducing stigma. And new this year, and Charlotte is on this call today. One of the things that we heard from some of our families with kiddos who are neurodiverse, and they saw the work that we were trying to do around SOGI, around Indigenous kiddos, around racism. They wanted us to take some action about promoting that sense of belonging for our neurodiverse kids. So we've been doing some division-wide activities, Rock Your Socks, and Autism Awareness Day coming up here right away. And so hoping to, again, create that sense of belonging for lots of different communities in our school division. And Rogan, if you can just share Carly's interview. So Carly was also interviewed as part of the stakeholder engagement. Carly is no longer a student, but was a student of St. Albert. And Carly has a global developmental delay. So you can hear about what Carly thinks about belonging.
Unfortunately, that is actually as loud as I can make it.
Okay. That's okay. I mean, I can just summarize what, so Carly ends up saying it's okay to be different, and it's okay to have things that stand out, and that she has a beautiful life. And I think that the work that we are trying to do in St. Albert is really around helping everybody get to a place where they can honestly say that they have a beautiful life. And it is challenging work. It's emotionally heavy, and it's intellectually heavy. Some folks are resistant for sure, and some folks are staying in a place of denial. And this is really not about shame and blame for us, but it's around when we know better, we do better. And that's what we are trying to do, to create a kinder and more connected community where we can truly and authentically see each other. And that's it for me. Thank you so much. And I think we'll do the same reflective questions. If anything resonated with you, I've lost my chat. But thank you for the opportunity to share how we're disrupting in order to increase belonging.
And I apologize.
Definitely being uncomfortable is the part. Oh, sorry.
No,
Anne?
go ahead.
No, I was just reading your comment in the chat about disruption and getting uncomfortable. We are often uncomfortable here. I can tell you that.
Yeah, it's important, and it's the step that people don't want to take first, but it's the one you have to take first, I think, to make movement. And I just want to apologize for popping the book link in as you were talking. I meant to hit it afterwards, but I hit enter instead of hitting something else. So anyway, Street Data is a great book for a resource if people want to look at how to use that sort of qualitative data in a quantitative way for certain people when they need to make equity-based decisions. So we like that book too.
It is a great resource. Very good. Okay, we're going to do the awkward silence wait again.
You are okay with being uncomfortable.
Totally.
Just kidding.
Okay, I'm not going to say this time that we have to hear from one more person because I know we're over 2:30 already. So I think we're just going to have a little bit of time. And Danica's probably going to pop back in with a mic to talk about what system education leader practices are necessary to support student mental health in order to ensure optimum learning for all students throughout your school authority. So I think we just wanted to have a little bit of time to potentially talk about that. And again, recognizing that we've gone a little bit over what we had originally planned.
Yep, I'll just briefly highlight that there is a CAS Perspective project. It's embedded within the community, the Continuum of Supports and Services project. And when you go to the ideas tab, you'll see it as the first idea. And so we won't pause now and take time, but I will just put that out there to encourage participants today. If you have any reflections from today's webinar that you feel would be great to share there, and pop them in and add them. And on behalf of CAS and my role as a leadership consultant, I just want to thank all of our presenters today for sharing such incredible stories of practice about how the work that they're doing is promoting positive student mental health throughout their systems. Thank you.